A dark conspiracy unfolds inside the tense study as Rose and her father plot to corner their helpless victim. Rose mockingly demeans her sister's status as an illegitimate child, reminding her to be grateful to their father. Larit stares back with a chillingly silent glare, instantly sparking intense frustration within her spoiled sister. Larit calmly reveals she is content marrying a disgraced, potentially dead duke, utterly shocking Rose with her indifference. Rose bursts into hysterical, mocking laughter at the sheer absurdity of her sister marrying a ruined traitor. Her mocking laughter abruptly cut short as an unsettling cold sensation washes over her. Boiling with sudden rage, Rose storms across the room, demanding to know how her sister dares to mock her. With a vicious swing, Rose violently strikes her sister across the face, yet the victim remains chillingly calm despite the blow. Knowing no one will help her, Larit abandons her submissive act and forcefully shoves her sister down. Rose cowers on the floor, trembling in absolute shock and terror at the unexpected retaliation. Standing tall, Larit firmly asserts that she is no longer the lowly one in this house. Larit pins her sister to the floor, fiercely declaring that Rose is the one who is truly pathetic. As Rose panics and accuses her of madness, Larit furiously reprimands her sister for her history of violence. Suddenly, their father grabs Larit by her silver hair, violently pulling her back to protect Rose. The world spins in a blur as the young girl is violently thrown across the library. Looming over her, the furious Count demands respect, accusing Larit of ingratitude after they housed and fed her. He coldly suggests that her comfortable life has made her forget her place, as maids attend to Rose. Sobbing on the floor, Rose vindictively demands that their father beat Larit half to death. Adjusting his cuffs with a sinister smirk, the abusive Count coldly agrees to carry out the brutal punishment. Larit glares up with unwavering defiance as her father slowly approaches to strike. Bruised and bloodied, the silver-haired girl mentally resolves to never take their abuse lying down again. In a desperate move, Larit lunges forward and sinks her teeth deep into her father's leg, making him shriek in agony. The Count screams in absolute rage and pain, desperately commanding her to let go of him. Fierce internal vow echoes as she declares she will never allow anyone to treat her like garbage again. The Count frantically kicks his leg in a panic, but Larit clings on tightly, refusing to release her grip. Rose screams in terror as her father continues to howl in agonizing pain, unable to break free. With a desperate effort, Larit is violently flung away, crashing hard onto the wooden floor. Clutching his severe wound, the Count is hurried away by his maids while a panicked Rose checks on him. A frantic call for medicine echoes through the halls as they scramble to treat the bleeding bite. Left alone on the floor, Larit disgustedly spits out her abuser's blood, her eyes blazing with raw defiance. She reflects on how the legendary Duke of Reinhardt was originally betrothed to her spoiled half-sister, Rose. The arranged marriage was meant to secure the Brumaire family's ultimate grip on power. Rose had desperately pursued the powerful Duke, and her father quickly arranged the marriage to satisfy her greed. Tragedy struck when the Duke was reportedly assassinated on his journey home from winning the war. Driven by greed for the dowry, the Count decided to secretly swap the bride, sending Larit in Rose's place. Arriving at her destination in the dead of night, the cold coachman dumps her meager belongings onto the ground. Left behind in the freezing darkness, Larit quietly scoffs at her family's final petty insult. Clenching a small piece of coal, she realizes she is finally free from her abusive family's torment. With a decisive throw, she tosses the stone into the night sky, casting away her dark past. Ignoring the distant shouts of the departing coachman, she pulls up her hood and heads toward her new home. Standing before her is the Duke's abandoned mountain villa, his only remaining asset after his ruin. Stepping inside, Larit finds the massive estate completely deserted, devoid of any servants or wharf. Feeling the biting chill of the oncoming night, she quickly searches for a way to light the dark mansion. With a bright spark, she lights a candle, bringing a small flicker of warmth to the cold room. Carrying the small lamp, she wanders through the grand, silent halls of her new, vast sanctuary. Peering through the glass window, she is pleasantly surprised by the beautiful view of the snowy night. Sitting on the quiet windowsill, she gently touches the cold glass, finding peace in the solitude. Looking back at her past, she realizes her days of eating inedible scraps in fear are finally over. Her painful past fades away as she embraces the quiet, dark night of her newfound freedom. Curled up securely in the window, Larit smiles gently, ready to embrace a brand new start in life. Behind her icy blue eyes lies a destiny forged in winter's freezing depths. The silver-haired girl desperately cradles a severely wounded unconscious knight Nara. A young red-haired girl watches suspiciously as a visitor enters her home. Rose questions her father about the newcomer, immediately despising the girl's silver hair and striking blue eyes. Throwing a tantrum, Rose demands her mother expel the girl, insisting she is the only true daughter. Seeking reassurance, Rose desperately asks the silent girl if the rumors are true. Gently holding her face, the father urges Rose to act as a proper older sister to avoid family disgrace. The Count formally introduces Larit to the household, marking the beginning of her new family life. Trying to ease the tension, Rose sweetly begs her father not to remain angry. Rose embraces her father, celebrating Larit's banishment and hoping her sister lies dead in the dirt. Smiling with dark anticipation, Rose eagerly awaits the news of her sister's death. Far from dead, Larit busily carries firewood inside, suddenly sensing someone is gossiping about her. Larit spent her meager allowance on firewood to survive the mountain chill. Larit carefully strikes a match to light the cold villa fireplace. Larit gently blows on the spark, recalling her sister's mockery about collecting firewood. Resting her chin, Larit realizes she would have frozen to death without her dry wood supply. Finding a moment of peace, Lorette sits comfortably in a rocking chair. Lorette managed to sneak some potatoes, matches, and spices from her household. Looking around her empty kitchen, Lorette ponders what delicious meal to prepare next. After dreaming of luxurious dishes, Lorette realistically decides to keep her meal simple. She carefully places the raw potatoes directly into the blazing fireplace coals. Rustic grilled potato makes for a perfect, hearty farmer's meal. Watching her simple meal cook, Lorette anticipates a warm and comforting feast. Surveying the massive, dusty estate, Lorette decides it is time to start cleaning. Carrying a bucket, Lorette prepares to clean the villa with river water. Clutching her cleaning tools, Lorette firmly asserts that survival requires regular daily meals. Lorette realizes the massive empty house holds unexpected value for her survival. Lorette sets her eyes on a sturdy wooden cabinet, recognizing its potential worth. Lorette admires the high-quality wood, estimating it could buy her a month of food. She seriously considers breaking the expensive furniture down to sell for cash. Brilliant eyes sparkle as she devises a clever plan for survival. Lorette looks around the grand room, seeing potential profit in every corner. Lorette eagerly prices every dusty piece of furniture in terms of potato currency. Leaning against a wooden chest, Lorette feels secure knowing she can survive. Gentle smoke billows from the fireplace, signaling a cozy, warm home. Splitting open the roasted potato reveals a steaming, perfectly cooked center. Lorette happily cradles the hot roasted potato in her bare hands. Lorette sprinkles salt over her steaming potato, carefully blowing on the heat. Lorette eagerly takes a bite, reminding herself to eat slowly and carefully. She greedily chews the delicious potato, savoring the simple warmth it brings. Chewing happily, Lorette finds the humble baked potato to be absolutely delicious. Eating contentedly, Lorette only wishes she had some fresh milk to match. Lorette chews thoughtfully, feeling deeply grateful to simply plan tomorrow's meals. A painful flashback shows a young, crying Lorette lamenting her harsh life. A woman in a dark dress rushes up the stairs, ignoring her. Lorette remembers her mother boarding a carriage, leaving her behind like unwanted luggage. Crying in the cold rain, the young girl realizes she has been abandoned. Sometime later, the Count warmly welcomes a new countess into the family. Lorette recalls how she once foolishly believed her new family welcomed her out of kindness. Rose looks back with absolute contempt, sneering at her sister as a cheeky, illegitimate child, but the ultimate revenge is yet to unfold. Lorette remembers her family's cruel treatment as she sits huddled on piles of books, denied food for the night. Accepting her grim reality with quiet resilience, the silver-haired girl simply nods and prepares to endure the hunger. She holds a meager piece of hard, stale bread broken in half, her only source of sustenance. Now safe in her own villa, Lorette enjoys a quiet moment drinking warm tea while reflecting on her winter survival plan. Sitting peacefully by the window, she takes comfort in her newfound independence, determined to settle her anxious thoughts. She quietly resolves to take things one step at a time and slowly adapt to her lonely but free life. A soft, rhythmic rustling sounds as she walks through the autumn woods, falling ginkgo leaves carpeting her path. Carrying a basket overflowing with fresh bread and vegetables, she happily decides to head back to the mansion. Under the warm autumn sun, the silver-haired girl smiles contentedly, pleased with her successful trip to the village market. Whistling a cheerful tune, she is completely satisfied with her peaceful new life and the warm hospitality of the local villagers. Returning to her villa, Lorette notes how the clever villagers have adapted to the freezing soil by planting winter vegetables. Grateful for the villagers' kindness, she carefully pours a fresh supply of brown sugar into a glass jar. Standing in her tidy kitchen, the silver-haired girl feels incredibly lucky and takes pride in her well-stocked pantry. She surveys her organized shelves, noting the preserved jars ready for winter and the clean, spacious first floor. Eager to reward herself after her long travels, Lorette prepares to cook a hearty stew in her spacious kitchen. She carefully unbraids the packaging of a high-quality steak, determined not to let a single scrap go to waste. Working with practice ease, she begins peeling the fresh potatoes and carrots for her upcoming meal. She recalls the special spices gifted by the friendly village mayor, promising to elevate the stew's flavor. Suddenly, a thunderous crash sounds, startling Lorette and causing her to drop the wooden pepper grinder. Looking around the empty, silent kitchen, she wonders who could possibly be visiting such an isolated mansion. She cautiously bends down to retrieve the fallen pepper grinder, her heart racing at the unexpected noise. Gripping the heavy wooden grinder like a weapon, Lorette steels herself to defend her home from any intruders. Walking on quiet tiptoes, she creeps toward the front door, realizing the mysterious noise has suddenly vanished. Peeking cautiously around the corner, Lorette wonders if the noise was simply caused by a passing wild animal. A sudden realization strikes her as she remembers something she witnessed on her journey back to the villa. She recalls looking up at a flock of migrating birds soaring across the beautiful amber autumn sky. Lorette frets over whether a lost baby bird needs help, while simultaneously fearing it might be a dangerous mountain beast. She thinks back to the overwhelming kindness of the village ants who readily offered her help and fresh apples. Inspired by their warmth, the silver-haired girl resolves to pay it forward and help any creature in need. Returning to the tense present, she swallows hard and slowly approaches the front door to investigate. The slow, heavy creak, she gently pulls the large wooden door open to peer outside. Standing before her in the dark, starry night is a heavily armored, dark-haired man leaning weakly against the frame. Gasping for air, the bloodied warrior stumbles forward, his amber eyes locked onto Lorette's startled face. Shocked by his sudden appearance, the silver-haired girl stands frozen as the massive man looms over her. The heavily bloodied man stares at her through half-lidded eyes, weakly whispering a faint question before collapsing. Overwhelmed by confusion, Lorette can only stare back in silent disbelief at the mysterious wounded intruder. With a sudden heavy slump, the unconscious warrior collapses entirely, falling directly onto the startled girl's shoulder. Leaning heavily against her, the dying man weakly mutters a desperate plea of innocence before losing consciousness completely. Left in a stunned silence, Lorette holds her forehead, trying to process the chaotic turn of events. After dragging him inside, she looks down at the resting man and asks for his name, realizing his identity. She imagines her fated husband, the prestigious Duke Reinhardt, realizing she would never have met him under normal circumstances. Outside, the quiet snowy night continues to fall over the lonely villa, contrasting the tense life-or-death struggle inside. Letting out a weary sigh, Lorette prepares to tend to the unconscious Duke's severe wounds. She keeps him warm under thick blankets in her favorite rocking chair, anxious about his critical condition. Sweating profusely, the dark-haired Duke sleeps fitfully, his face pale and strained from the lingering fever. With gentle care, Lorette uses a damp cloth to wipe away the blood and sweat from his forehead. He lets out a weak, pained groan as his body continues to fight off the severe infection. Sitting faithfully by his side, she holds a bowl of water and wonders if he will survive the night. Staring at him, she feels a complex mix of resentment and pity, wishing to avoid any further family complications. She is suddenly reminded of her painful past, recalling when she was brutally slapped and falsely accused of theft. The wounded, dark-haired warrior stares ahead with weary amber eyes, his face covered in cuts and blood. Resting in the rocking chair, he weakly contemplates his dire situation as the silver-haired girl watches over him. Kneeling by his side, Lorette gently holds his hand and softly urges the unconscious man to hold on to life. Staring down in silence, she tightly clasps his hand, offering quiet comfort to the feverish warrior. With a gentle smile, the silver-haired girl rests her head near his hand, relieved that his fever is finally broken. In a sudden flashback, the Duke marches triumphantly alongside his red-haired comrades, celebrating their hard-won victory. He gazes at the sky with a sense of relief, deeply satisfied to finally return home after years of war. As footsteps approach from behind, the atmosphere grows tense as someone quietly draws near the Duke. Sensing a presence, the dark-haired captain turns around, surprised to see his subordinate, Barthold. A sudden, agonizing betrayal strikes as Barthold stabs his captain from behind, muttering a tearful apology. Shocked by the betrayal, the Duke gasps in pain while his trembling attacker insists he had no other choice. The maddened soldier screams his justification before the scene abruptly cuts back to the Duke waking up in a cold sweat. Gasping for air, the Duke sits up in the rocking chair, his heart racing from the terrifying nightmare. Clutching his bandaged abdomen, he winces in sudden pain, trying to reorient himself in the quiet room. He looks around the dusty room, deeply confused about where he is and how he survived. Surveying the unfamiliar furniture, he realizes he is safe and must stay alive to uncover the truth. He looks down in surprise to find the silver-haired girl sitting quietly beside his knees. Staring at her, he realizes this young girl is far too young to be his nanny. Slowly reaching out, his hand hesitates as he gazes at her unfamiliar silver hair. He gently brushes his hand against her soft, shimmering silver hair as she rests peacefully. Watching her sleep, he feels a wave of gratitude, realizing she must have nursed him back to health. He quietly admires her dedication, wondering how much effort she put into saving his life. A sudden humorous standoff ensues as the two lock eyes in a silent, wide-eyed gaze. Lorette blinks awake, startled to find the dark-haired warrior staring back at her. Quickly regaining her composure, she reassures him he is safe, claims her rocking chair, and asks if he likes stew. Completely bewildered by her casual attitude, the Duke can only ask her to repeat herself. Determined to cook, the silver-haired girl carries her ingredients to prepare a comforting meal. As she walks away to let him rest, the Duke winces in pain from his lingering injuries. He turns his head sharply as a sudden noise in the kitchen catches his attention. In the kitchen, Lorette carefully follows the steps of a stew recipe, frying meat and boiling vegetables with spices. After tasting the boiling broth, the silver-haired girl looks incredibly proud and satisfied with her cooking. Holding his head, the Duke looks up as the sound of footsteps signals her return with the food. Lorette presents a tray with 2 bowls of steaming, delicious-looking stew she worked hard to prepare. Staring at the rich meal, the Duke skeptically questions if this is actually a proper stew. Annoyed by his suspicion, Lorette internally questions if there is such a thing as a fake stew. As they eat, she flatly corrects his address, pointing out that she is not a noble lady. Lorette happily eats her warm meal, completely unfazed by his intense gaze. The dark-haired Duke blushes slightly, caught off guard by her blunt and simple demeanor. A wave of shock washes over him as he tries to process her surprising claim of being married. He watches her eat in utter disbelief, wondering who on earth she could possibly be married to. Unable to contain his curiosity, he asks her about her husband while holding his bowl of stew. She simply asks why he isn't eating, leaving him feeling more parched and confused the more they talk. Feeling the urge to leave, the Duke looks down at his bandaged chest, realizing he has no time to waste. Lorette quickly raises a hand, firmly telling him to stop moving and sit still to protect his wounds. She walks back into the room holding a wooden bucket, ready to administer proper medical treatment. She explains that his severe stomach wound is the primary cause of his lingering high fever. Unbuttoning his shirt to inspect the injury, she bluntly advises him to scream if it hurts too much. The Duke winces and groans in agony as she begins treating the deep, painful laceration. He recalls the fateful night he was stabbed, realizing the traitor's sword possessed some unnatural, slow-healing magic. With steady hands, the silver-haired girl carefully cleans and bandages his bleeding stomach wound to save him. Larit gently urges the dark-haired Duke to be patient as she finishes tending to his severe wounds, prompting him to sigh in relief. Although the Duke feels refreshed after her care, he remains deeply bewildered by his bizarre circumstances, tightly gripping the armrest. The silver-haired girl calmly explains that she held his hand so his nails wouldn't painfully dig into his own flesh. Flushed with quiet embarrassment, the wounded Duke remains silent, unable to find the words to respond to her. Larit instructs the resting Duke to remain completely still as she leaves to fetch clean bandages. Left alone, the Duke inspects his carefully cleaned wounds, resolving to clarify his situation before getting further involved. Returning to the room, the silver-haired girl prompts him to speak his mind, her bright blue eyes fixed on him. The Duke directly asks if she is truly aware of their current location. Larit matter-of-factly answers that she is well aware they are residing in the Duke's secluded villa. The Duke is taken aback, realizing she knowingly occupied the property despite it belonging to nobility. The silver-haired girl casually drops the bombshell that she has become the official hostess of the prestigious Duke family. Utterly stunned by her calm proclamation, the Duke can only stare at her in complete disbelief. Larit firmly asserts her ownership of the villa, stating that even a nominal marriage title holds immense importance to her. A memory of the Duke's past reveals his servants and nanny constantly pestering him to finally find a wife. The relentless gray-haired nanny playfully scolds the exhausted Duke, urging him not to delay his marriage prospects any longer. Wearied by endless battles, the Duke recalls how he absent-mindedly accepted a marriage proposal just to appease his household. Remembering the marriage document of Rose Brumeyer, the Duke asks the girl if that is her actual name, trying to recall her face. Staring at her, the Duke mentally notes her oddity and suddenly realizes that he might actually be her husband. Deciding to table the confusing marriage matter for later, the Duke realizes his life has just become infinitely more complicated. Looking down in deep thought, he emphasizes that she must be fully aware of his dangerous identity. Larit simply nods in agreement, confirming she knows exactly who he is. The Duke warns her that admitting this so easily brands her an accomplice to an accused traitor. Larit remains unfazed, quietly pondering the irreversible consequences of aiding someone accused of treason. She calmly remarks that her peaceful plans for the future have already gone completely awry. Larit pragmatically points out that her dream of quietly owning the villa is now officially ruined. A heavy silence fills the space as the reality of their shared predicament settles over them. The dark-haired Duke lets out a faint, amused chuckle at how bizarrely calm and unusual she is. Leaning back with a weary sigh, the exhausted warrior rests his arm over his tired eyes. He weakly confesses that simply holding a conversation with her has completely drained his remaining energy. Reflects on his painful journey of climbing the treacherous mountain while fleeing from the traitors who betrayed him. Despite his burning rage and desire for revenge, conversing with the strange girl in a warm room slowly calms his mind. He silently contemplates the bizarre peace he has found in her quiet company. The Duke quietly murmurs a belated thank you to Larit for saving his life. Larit flatly responds that he should save his gratitude until he is fully recovered. Finding her dry response predictable, the Duke chuckles softly while touching his bandaged abdomen. Feeling the unexpected warmth of the villa, the Duke asks Larit another question as she tucks him in. Looking through the frosted glass, Larit gazes out at the winter landscape from inside the cozy room. Spotting the first snowfall of the season, Larit looks out in quiet wonder while holding her seed packet. Realizing she cannot plant her new seeds outside in the snow, she wonders if she can bring dirt indoors. In the kitchen, a pot of water boils merrily over a warm hearth, sending steam into the air. She prepares a hot brew, gently stirring the steaming white liquid inside the dark pot. With steady hands, the silver-haired girl carefully pours the freshly brewed hot liquid into a delicate teacup. Larit muses that she has not made tea since arriving at the villa, hoping it will soothe her empty stomach. She imagines high-class nobles who casually drink expensive tea as if it were simple water. A soft clinking sound echoes as she stirs the tea, assuming the Duke also shares such luxurious habits. Larit takes a tentative sip of the freshly brewed warm milk tea, pausing to evaluate the taste. Wrinkling her brow slightly, she realizes that the plain milk tea is missing a crucial ingredient. She generously sprinkles sugar into her cup, knowing that unsweetened milk tea tastes like nothing but warm water. Carrying the warm beverage, she walks down the dimly lit hallway and knocks softly on the Duke's door. A sudden click of the door handle causes the resting Duke to instantly snap his amber eyes open in high alert. Larit presents the warm milk tea to the Duke, noting that his condition seems to have improved slightly. The silver-haired girl looks at him with a neutral, slightly skeptical expression. Looking up from his pillow, the flushed Duke silently admits to himself that his condition hasn't actually improved. Larit bluntly questions if ignoring illness is simply a special privilege reserved only for nobility. She wonders why he continues to cling to useless politeness despite his severe injuries. Setting down the tea, she matter-of-factly states that sick people have no obligation to remain polite. Larit asks him to sit up as she prepares to serve him the sweet milk too. Duke is caught off guard as Larit gently hands him the steaming teacup. She explains that she mixed medicinal fever-reducing leaves with milk to make the drink more palatable. Larit points out that since he cannot have regular meals yet, this warm drink is his best option. The Duke hesitatingly brings the cup to his lips, still feeling a bit embarrassed by her care. Finding comfort in the sweet taste, he drinks the tea and silently marvels at having milk in the mountains. Larit watches him drink, resting her chin on her hand as she enters deep thought. Larit casually mentions they are now out of milk tea ingredients, quickly telling him not to worry about it. The Duke sits frozen in comical disbelief, processing the realization that she sacrificed her last ingredients for him. A soft, genuine smile crosses his face as he looks at the uniquely blunt yet kind girl. Staring down at his cup, he acknowledges that she aided him despite knowing he was branded a traitor. As the Duke takes another sip, Larit quietly turns away to give him some space. Stepping over to the window, Larit decides to let in some fresh air despite the cold winter chill. The Duke looks up in surprise as the cool winter breeze sweeps into the quiet bedroom. Larit explains that the sudden drop in temperature is due to the heavy snowfall outside. The Duke pulls his warm blanket closer, settling back down into the comfortable bed. Staring into space, he reflects on the bittersweet feeling of watching the snow fall from inside this old villa. He recalls his childhood visits to this villa, a place his mother loved dearly for its beautiful wildflowers. He remembers staying here during his mother's illness, recalling how she always joined him to watch the snow. Deeply cherished memories of his mother in the snow remain permanently etched into his heart. For the young Duke, this secluded villa was a sacred sanctuary filled with his mother's warmth. He vividly remembers her gentle embrace, holding him close in the peaceful, snow-covered garden. Following her tragic passing, the grieving boy abandoned the villa, leaving it to gather dust and memories. Over the years, the empty mansion stood as a painful monument to the void his mother left behind. Though he tried to avoid his painful past, fate unexpectedly brought him back to this very villa. Amid his dark memories, a strange silver-haired girl suddenly appeared, boldly claiming to be his wedded wife. Larit continues her quiet chores around the room, completely unaware of the deep thoughts consuming him. The Duke wonders what Larit's father was thinking, sending his daughter to a remote villa completely unattended. He notes that despite her noble upbringing, she spends her days performing menial tasks by his side. He feels a growing urge to tell her the dangerous truth about his identity and situation. His hand tightly grips the white bedsheets as a wave of sudden physical pain washes over him. The Duke groans as his severe fever and injuries suddenly flare up again, draining his remaining strength. Gasping for breath, the exhausted warrior loses consciousness and collapses heavily back onto the bed. Larit turns around quickly, her bright blue eyes wide with sudden alarm as she hears him collapse. Abandoning her task, the silver-haired girl rushes to his bedside to check on his condition. The scene shifts to a pair of feet stepping lightly down the stairs as a door handle clicks open. In a continuation of his memory, young Ian walks down the stairs, sensing an unusual commotion below. He notes the quiet mansion should be empty, yet voices echo from the hallway talking about a festival. A young maid spots the boy on the stairs and warmly asks if he is finally awake. His beloved mother, Selena Reinhardt, appears in his memory, her bright smile radiating warmth and beauty. Pushing the heavy doors open, young Ian steps into the sunlit room with wide, curious eyes. He gasps in soft amazement as he catches sight of his mother waiting for him. Stepping eagerly into the room, the young boy calls out to his mother with pure joy. Young Ian leaps into his mother's loving embrace, crying out how much he has missed her. The blonde-haired woman looks back in surprise as the young dark-haired boy suddenly hugs her tightly. A warm atmosphere fills the room as the maids watch the young boy refuse to let go of his mother. Gently embracing her son, the mother warmly coaxes him to sit down and eat the breakfast prepared for him. The maids discuss the nanny's upcoming return from vacation, their voices carrying through the quiet, sunlit mansion. Walking down the hallway, the mother expresses concern that her son's behavior might be causing their nanny unnecessary stress. The young boy insists to his mother that he has been good, unaware of the shifting dream around him. The boy pauses in confusion as he suddenly notices unfamiliar gray hair belonging to the person beside him. Looking at the departing silver-haired figure, the young boy feels a strange sense of familiarity wash over him. His mother turns to him in gentle concern, asking what has made him freeze in his tracks. Brushing off his confusion, the young boy quickly reassures his mother that nothing is wrong. Follows his mother into the dining room, trying to dismiss the unsettling thoughts as mere childish imagination. Step by step, the dream continues to play out as the boy questions his own strange thoughts. The quiet image of the silver-haired girl looms in his subconscious, watching over his deep, feverish sleep. A luxurious and warm feast is laid out on the dining table, sparkling under the gentle dining room lights. As they begin their meal, the mother suddenly turns pale and covers her mouth in a fit of nausea. The dining room erupts into sudden chaos as the mother heaves violently, sending the maids rushing to her side. Wiping her mouth, the mother weakly tries to downplay her severe illness despite the maid's growing panic. Excusing herself, the frail mother urges her son to finish his meal slowly as she heads upstairs. Anxious for his mother's well-being, the young boy hurriedly stuffs food into his mouth so he can follow her. Dropping his utensils, the worried boy dashes out of the dining room to check on his ailing mother. Mother rests quietly in her favorite rocking chair, surrounded by a serene aura of yellow wildflowers. The peaceful silence of the room is broken as the young boy pushes the door open to find her. Hearing the door burst open, the elegant woman looks back with a gentle, surprised expression. She warmly asks her son if he has already finished his breakfast as he rushes to her side. With a face full of childish worry, the boy admits how deeply concerned he is for her health. Smiling tenderly, the mother reassures him that she is stronger than the fragile glass everyone treats her as. She pulls her son into a warm, playful embrace, filling the room with laughter and shared affection. A maid knocks and enters the room carrying medicine, followed by the curious gazes of the younger servants. The cute little maid children peek through the doorway, their eyes sparkling at the sweet mother-son moment. The mother cradles her son's cheeks, teasing him affectionately while he looks on with adorable embarrassment. The two share a heartwarming laugh, basking in the pure joy of their loving bond. The affectionate maids playfully pile onto the bed, urging their beloved mistress to always remain healthy and happy. They express their deep, heartfelt sincerity, holding on to her as if she were the center of their world. Her radiant, joyful laugh echoes as the narrative notes the profound sincerity of her loyal household. Clinging to his mother's warm embrace, the young boy sheds tears of absolute happiness and peace. The beautiful dream of eternal family happiness fades away as the adult Duke slowly wakes up, sighing in the cold reality. Staring at the dusty, faded walls of the old villa, he realizes how much time has ravished his childhood sanctuary. A chilly winter draft brushes against his skin, amplifying the stark contrast to his warm, sunny dream. Raising his hand to his face, the exhausted Duke quietly wipes away a stray tear from his eye. He looks up to find the calm, silver-haired girl standing by his bedside, watching over him in silence. Still gripped by the lingering fever, he weakly gasps out a request for help before breaking into a cough. Larit calmly tucks him back into bed, instructing him to remain still and save his remaining strength. He stays silent as she gently places her cool hand on his feverish forehead to check his temperature. Looking at Larit, the Duke wonders if his mother would have cherished the strange girl just like her favorite rocking chair. She carefully wipes his sweat-dampened brow with a soft cloth, tending to him with quiet, unhurried devotion. This unexpected, gentle care triggers a deep wave of nostalgia, bringing silent tears to his eyes once more. Restless in his recovery, he murmurs his desire to see his loyal household servants who once opposed his marriage. He contemplates how this silver-haired girl came all the way to this remote villa despite knowing the dangers. In a rare gesture of comfort, her small hands gently cover his, offering him a silent anchor of warmth. Holding his hand, she gazes down quietly, her serene presence promising a peaceful refuge from his turbulent past. Larit reflects on her detachment, stating she no longer belongs to the Duke's household. Sitting by his bedside, Larit holds his hand and gently reassures the feverish Duke that he is no longer a load. Flush with a lingering fever, Ian stares up in quiet, weary silence. A faint, tired smile touches the dark-haired warrior's lips as he lapses into quiet thought. Comforted by her presence, Ian softly acknowledges her support as she gently squeezes his hand. A grand family crest appears as the narrative ponders the legendary definition of a master swordsman. History speaks of Elliot von Hood, the first master swordsman who could truly feel the sorcery flowing within a blade. The ultimate outcome of battles between master swordsmen hinges on the raw sorcery power stored in their blades. Regulating one's inner energy enhances self-control, boosting physical senses to dramatically accelerate recovery from injuries. Outside, the winter snow falls heavily as the narrative explains how master swordsmen recover from otherwise fatal wounds. As his healing powers take effect, the slumbering Duke begins to show signs of physical recovery. A sudden realization dawns as Ian slowly opens his golden eyes, returning to consciousness. A week after Ian's arrival, Larit examines their dwindling winter food supplies in the villa's pantry. Noting the freezing temperature, Laret decides to prepare a warm, digestible meal to aid his recovery. She decides on broccoli as the primary ingredient for today's simple home-cooked meal. Bundled up in her winter cloak, Larit carries her freshly gathered ingredients back to the kitchen. Entering the kitchen, she places her basket of vegetables onto the prep table with a soft clack. Looking out at the heavy snowfall, Larit shivers slightly from the penetrating winter chill. Realizing the storm might worsen, she decides she must act quickly before the snow blocks her path. Larit carefully stir-fries the chopped vegetables over low heat to ensure they cook evenly without burning. She adds fermented wine and select spices to the pot to enhance the rich aroma of the soup. Pouring water into the pot, she laments the lack of better ingredients but makes do with what remains. Stirring the simmering broth, Larit remains determined to make the simple meal as delicious as possible. Larit gasps in surprise as she turns around to find Ian standing in the kitchen doorway, awake and upright. The Duke looks at her with a soft, gentle expression, silently appreciating her hard work. Startled by his sudden presence, Larit asks if he has already woken up. Realizing he stood there silently to tease her, Larit looks at him with a mix of surprise and mild exasperation. Ian's playful demeanor softens as he quietly observes him, a solemn look crossing his face. Larit explains that she's preparing a simple vegetable soup to help ease his digestion. Ian offers to help with the cooking, prompting a skeptical, silent stare from the silver-haired girl. To test his recovery, Larit bluntly pokes his sore stomach, eliciting a sharp groan of pain. Carrying the prepared meal, Larit refuses his help, noting his battered body is in no condition to assist. Clutching his sore stomach, Ian playfully protests her blunt physical assessment as she heads up the stairs. Ian pauses, caught off guard by her uncompromising yet deeply caring attitude. Larit looks back and asks if he is smiling, leaving him flustered and confused. Turning away, Larit lets a rare warm smile grace her lips, showing her gentle heart. Ian stares in shock, deeply touched by the unexpected beauty of her genuine smile. Left standing alone, Ian wraps his blanket tighter, quietly reflecting on her surprisingly warm nature. Sitting together in the quiet dining room, the two share a peaceful meal as the winter snow falls outside. Ian takes a spoonful of the warm soup, quietly savoring the simple favor. Larit watches him intently with wide, expectant blue eyes, hoping he enjoys her cooking. Noticing his empty cup, Larit looks up in surprise and points out that there is still plenty of soup left. Ian sincerely thanks her for the delicious meal, while Larit privately worries that he didn't eat enough. Though a simple, ordinary soup, Ian deeply appreciates the genuine warmth and kindness infused in every bite. Overwhelmed by his gratitude, Ian fidgets nervously, trying to find the right words to thank her. Holding his head in embarrassment, Ian struggles internally to find a way to express his deep gratitude. While Larit happily plans her next chores, Ian silently curses his own social awkwardness. Breaking the awkward silence, Ian suddenly finds an opportunity to speak up and offer his help once more. When Ian eagerly asks what to do with his empty bowl, Larit suspects another attempt to overexert himself. Ian pauses mid-gesture under Larit's intensely protective and warning glare. Larit and Ian sit quietly at the dining table, sharing a peaceful moment after finishing their simple meal. Watching her silently, Ian mentally notes that his recovering body is still too weak to move as he wants. Larit leaves the dining room to finish her cleaning chores, leaving Ian alone with his deep thoughts. Looking down at the floor, Ian realizes there is normally only one single chair kept downstairs. He realizes that Larit must have carried this heavy wooden chair all the way down from the second floor for him. Ian resolves to recover his strength as quickly as possible so he can finally help her with the chores. He clutches a glowing blue glass bottle necklace in his hand, wondering how he can truly repay her kindness. Sitting alone at the wooden table, Ian contemplates the best way to help the quiet, silver-haired girl. He realizes that proving his innocence and clearing his false charges is the only real way to protect her. Setting a cup down, Larit returns to the dining room and directly asks him what he is trying to say. Sipping her tea, Larit quietly wonders why he is hesitating so much to speak his mind. Tense and sweating, Ian struggles to find the right words to share the heavy truth of his situation. Looking down in somber silence, Ian steels himself and confesses to Larit that he is considered a traitor. He tightly clasps his hands together over his lap as the weight of his dark confession hangs in the room. Though Larit had already guessed his secret, hearing the confession directly from him makes her pause in deep thought. She reflects on his immense status as a legendary master swordsman and duke with influence rivaling the imperial family. Staring at her, Ian realizes that she is already analyzing who must be behind his sudden downfall. Ian hesitantly asks if she truly believes his words, while Larit calmly looks down at her teacup. Larit looks up at him with steady, clear blue eyes, showing her absolute calm and lack of doubt. Surprised by her serene composure, Ian can only stare back at her in silent wonder. Closing his eyes with a sigh, Ian prepares to explain the deeper details of the conspiracy against him. While Ian emphasizes his absolute certainty about the betrayal, Larit calmly asks him if he has any proof. Ian explains that his treacherous subordinates explicitly mention the royal family's involvement during their sudden attack. Larit notices his costly crystal necklace, prompting Ian to reveal it is made of legendary dragon steers. A majestic golden crest representing the dragon race appears as the narrative notes their rare and powerful existence. The lore reveals that dragons sometimes lose control of their immense magical powers, leading to chaotic appearances. Ancient historical murals depict the fierce battles between humanity and rogue dragons that threaten the kingdom. Only a legendary master swordsman can defeat dragons, whose remains are highly coveted for their incredible magical properties. Golden coins rain down as the narrative emphasizes the astronomical value of dragon materials on the black market. Larit looks on in quiet amazement, finally understanding the legendary nature of the tear-shaped crystal. Ian explains that the potion within the crystal acts as a powerful truth serum when consumed. He reveals that only 2 such crystals exist in the world, with his blue one being his family's treasury. Taking a slow, thoughtful sip of her tea, Larit remains deeply engrossed in his incredible explanation. Larit curiously tilts her head, questioning why he carries such a valuable treasure and how it links to the royals. Smiling sheepishly, Ian acknowledges her logical doubts and prepares to clarify the rest of the mystery. Ian explains that the rare crystal serves as key evidence that the royal family ordered his assassination. Clutching the crystal, Ian reveals that the mastermind behind his betrayal is none other than the crown prince. Larit reacts with shock, realizing the true gravity of the political storm surrounding her companion. Ian stands up, declaring that keeping this crystal safe is his only hope of proving his innocence. Larit looks up at him with a puzzled expression, still confused about how the crystal can save him. Ian looks away thoughtfully, contemplating the strategic leverage he holds against the imperial throne. A cold winter wind howls outside the window as the political chess match between Ian and the prince deepens. Larit remains silent, digesting the dangerous reality of harboring a man hunted by the empire's ruler. Larit's wooden chair scrapes against the floor as she suddenly shifts her posture. Standing up abruptly, Larit directly questions how he expects to clear his name using only a truth potion. Catching him off guard, she asks if they have received any official imperial invitation yet, which he confirms. Looking out the glass window, Ian reveals that he already has a cunning plan in mind. A grand imperial crest appears as the narrative recounts the ancient unification of the continent under the Lhasa Empire. An old map details the severe political strife and division caused by rival noble factions centuries ago. Ornate invitations sealed in red wax are shown, revealing the empire's tradition of hosting Grand National Foundation banquets. Ian resolves to use the invitation to gain entry into the Grand National Foundation banquet. Standing tall, Ian confidently declares his plan to attend the imperial gathering. At the crowded palace ball, Ian believes the dragon's tears will fully prove his innocence to the nobility. Looking at Larit, Ian explains that his plan hinges on arriving at the banquet safely to seek royal support. Ian smiles thoughtfully, hinting that he has another clever strategy up his sleeve. As Ian walks beside Larit, the narrative notes his plan requires full physical recovery and subduing the castle guards. Larit pauses in shock as she realizes the true nature of his dangerous proposal. Larit confronts Ian, asking if he plans to attend the dangerous banquet alone using her invitation. Ian gently explains that going together would only put her in extreme danger if his plan fails. He secretly reflects on the political suspicion they would face if she accompanied him to the palace. Ian reassures her that staying behind allows her to claim her invitation was simply stolen. Stunned by his selflessness, Larit remains silent as a realization begins to dawn on her. Turning to him, Larit firmly asserts that they can go to the banquet together. Larit grips her dress, silently resolving that she cannot let him be the first to offer help. An image of Rose, the smug, red-haired noblewoman, appears as the rightful guest expected at the banquet. Larit silently worries that she might unexpectedly run into Rose at the high society event. She ponders how Ian will reclaim his high status and estate once his innocence is finally proven. As Ian walks past, Larit reflects on how he will soon return to his glorious position as a duke. She somberly recalls the harsh noble societal prejudice she has faced her entire life as an illegitimate child. Walking downstairs, Larit realizes Ian only treats her well because he mistakes her for the high-born Rose. Deeply saddened, she accepts that the ultimate beneficiary of her hard work will be the real Rose. Clutching her dress tightly, Larit decides it is not yet time to reveal her true identity or plans. Larit tells Ian that his idea is sound, though her distant tone catches him off guard. Larit walks away, leaving Ian standing alone and deeply perplexed by her sudden change in mood. Ian raises a hand in confusion, desperately wondering if he said something wrong to upset her. Ignoring his confusion, Larit quickly runs down the stairs to focus on her immediate chores. Ian envisions her transformed into a magnificent, revered duchess, matching his grand plan for her future. Standing by the doorway, Ian feels uneasy, noticing she seemed depressed despite a seemingly perfect plan. Downstairs, Larit grips a heavy wooden box on the table, preparing to head outside. Bundled up in her warm cloak, Larit lifts the box with a soft, determined click. Ian watches her closely, calling out to ask if she is planning to go out. Draped in a blue blanket, Ian descends the stairs to check on the silver-haired girl. Larit explains that she must fetch water as the temperature drops, but Ian insists on doing it. Stepping forward, Ian firmly takes the heavy wooden box from her hands to spare her the effort. Larit glares at him in disbelief, her sharp gaze warning him not to push his limits. Ian smiles warmly, playfully questioning how he could possibly let a sick person do all the heavy lifting. Dismissing her concern, Ian confidently reassures her that his minor wounds will not hold him back. Larit looks away in mild frustration as Ian proudly boasts about his rapid physical recovery. Refusing to argue, Larit swiftly snatches the box back and moves past him toward the door. The narrative highlights Larit's disbelief that her patient has no idea how far away the snowy valley actually is. Determined to protect him, Larit slips out the door to ensure he does not follow her. Ian calls out in surprise as she bolts into the freezing winter air, leaving him behind. Ian closes his eyes with a sigh, feeling the biting wind as he realizes her stubborn determination. Larit struggles through the deep, heavy snowdrifts, determinedly carrying her wooden box. Back at the house, Ian smiles with fond amusement as he realizes the depth of her stubbornness. Wrapping his cloak tighter, Ian steps out into the snow, refusing to let her walk alone. Larit trudges through the harsh winter landscape, her boots sinking deep into the fresh snow. Larit realizes that the heavy winter storm would have completely prevented Ian from keeping up with her. As Larit presses deeper into the forest, Ian quietly tracks her footsteps from a distance. Sensing a presence, Larit suddenly whips her head around to look back into the snowy woods. Turning back with wide blue eyes, the silver-haired girl is startled to find the dark-haired man has successfully followed her. Out in the snowy woods, she quickly turns and commands him not to follow her because of the freezing cold. Freezing blue stream flows quietly through the snow-laden valley, its peaceful waters masking their sudden encounter. The silver-haired girl gazes down in contemplative silence while the dark-haired man looks back at her with soft, sheepish concern. Standing by the snow-covered bank, the dark-haired man gently asks if she is truly angry with him. Crouching near the freezing water, the silver-haired girl questions why she must act so stubbornly. The dark-haired man tries to explain himself before suddenly reaching down as water splashes near the bank. Undeterred, the silver-haired girl carefully lifts her heavy wooden box, preparing to gather her water. Looking back over her shoulder, she calmly tells him that he can return to the warmth of the house now. Spinning around in sudden confusion, the silver-haired girl realizes that the dark-haired man has abruptly vanished from sight. She looks around the empty snowy landscape, wondering if he somehow managed to return to the house before her. To her surprise, the dark-haired man proudly presents a fresh, wriggling fish skewered on a branch with a smug grin. Standing directly in the shallow, icy stream, he explains his successful catch while she watches in sheer disbelief. Dumbfounded by his reckless behavior, the silver-haired girl anxiously asks if he is actually all right. Stepping out of the freezing stream, the dark-haired man wonders why she looks so deeply concerned for him. She admits she has never seen anyone catch a fish bare-handed, prompting him to confess it was his first try. Gripping her wooden box, she silently worries that his reckless dip in the freezing water will worsen his condition. The dark-haired man walks over and insists on carrying the heavy water container back for her. She stubbornly declines his help, leading to a playful argument about fairness as they bicker over the heavy wooden box. He carries the fish proudly, leaving the silver-haired girl to stare blankly at his absurd yet impressive display. Their hands struggle over the heavy wooden container, resulting in a sudden clumsy slip as water sloshes everywhere. The wooden box accidentally slips, drenching the dark-haired man in icy water as the silver-haired girl gasps in horror. Shivering violently and soaking wet, the dark-haired man insists he is fine, but his sudden sneeze betrays him. Drenched footsteps trail through the snow as the silver-haired girl frantically urges him to hurry back before catching a cold. A warm, crackling fire blazes in the stone fireplace back inside the cottage, offering desperately needed heat. Kneeling beside his chair, the silver-haired girl softly apologizes for her stubbornness as he sits wrapped tightly in a blanket. Though he cheerfully reassures her that he is warming up, his sudden, loud sneeze completely ruins his stoic act. Hiding her face in her hands, the silver-haired girl cannot help but giggle, admitting the fish catching was incredibly funny. Intrigued by her rare laughter, the dark-haired man waves the skewered fish, wondering if this was the source of her amusement. The silver-haired girl tries to look stern, but she cannot stop imagining him as a wild bear catching fish. He playfully begs her not to laugh, but her giggles prompt him to burst into joyful, genuine laughter himself. She quickly tries to deflect her embarrassment, insisting that the silly fish is not the real issue here. Sitting by the cozy fire, the silver-haired girl offers to prepare the fish, though the dark-haired man doubts her culinary plans. He declines her offer, admitting he was simply tired of eating the same repetitive meals every day. Looking at her affectionately, the dark-haired man suddenly realizes they have been communicating without ever using their real names. The silver-haired girl pauses, turning her head as he suddenly calls out to catch her attention. Peer through the frosty window pane, the cozy warmth inside frames their unspoken realization about their distant forms of address. Standing up and letting his blanket slide, the dark-haired man points out that they are supposed to be a married couple. With a warm, inviting smile, he suggests that they finally begin calling each other by their actual names. Looking down at her, he gently addresses her as madam, causing her to freeze in terror as she tightly grips her dress. A wave of absolute panic washes over the silver-haired girl, her blue eyes wide with dread at his sudden suggestion. Looking away in sheer distress, she frantically ponders what she should do to avoid revealing her true identity. She reflects on how carefully she has avoided addressing him by name to hide her status as a substitute bride. As his footsteps approach on the carpet, the dark-haired man starts to utter the name of his expected bride, Rose. Terrified of hearing that name, the silver-haired girl screams for him to stay back, taking a sudden step away. In her desperate rush to back away, her foot slips on her long dress, sending her tumbling to the floor. Startled by her dramatic reaction, the dark-haired man looks down in immense concern, asking if she is hurt. Sprawled on the floor, she frantically begs him not to come any closer, leaving a visible barrier of distress between them. The dark-haired man stands frozen in complete bewilderment, utterly unable to comprehend why his simple request caused such panic. Dark, painful memories of her stepsister Rose's cruel torment flash through her mind, echoing the trauma of her past life. Fearing she will startle Ian or make him think she is acting strange, Laurite nervously collects herself. Trying to calm her racing heart, Laurite decides to avoid Ian and excuses herself to prepare a meal. Ian stands alone in utter bewilderment, wondering why the pleasant atmosphere between them suddenly shattered again. Seeing her distress, Ian gently asks to accompany her, but his sudden concern only startles her further. Overwhelmed by panic, Laurite desperately screams at him to just leave her alone. Laurite quickly tries to soften her harsh words by telling Ian he can help her next time. The rain falls outside as Laurite pleads for just a moment of solitude to clear her mind. Alone in the quiet room, Laurite finally catches her breath and begins to calm her racing thoughts. Shaking off her temporary panic, Laurite turns and walks away to focus on her chores. Left standing in the empty room, Ian tightly clenches his fist in silent frustration and worry. Ian wonders if she hates being near a traitor, yet knows she wouldn't have saved him if so. Respecting her boundaries, Ian promises to wait until she is ready to talk before walking away. Clenching her dress, Laurite quietly exits, the soft creak of the door marking her escape. Left alone in the quiet parlor, Ian stares into space with a deeply troubled expression. Exhausted by the emotional turmoil, Laurite stumbles weakly against the kitchen cabinet to steady herself. Overcome by exhaustion and anxiety, the silver-haired girl slides down the cabinet to sit on the cold floor. Hiding her face in her hands, Laurite laments that even escaping her abusive family hasn't freed her. In a painful flashback, a spoiled 9-year-old Rose furiously demands to know the identity of the newcomer. An 8-year-old Laurette stands timidly in a simple brown dress, clutching her father's pant leg for comfort. While her sister Rose basked in luxury and love, young Laurite was relegated to the bleak shadows. Laurite recalls having to constantly endure Rose's hostile, contemptuous attitude throughout their entire childhood together. She remembers the deep-seated hatred that festered within the household upon her arrival as the wrong child. Despite the constant cruelty, young Laurite desperately made every effort to get close to her sister. Rose maliciously accused her of theft, turning the entire family against Laurite with absolute contempt. With a sudden gasp, Laurite snaps back to the present, her blue eyes wide with lingering pain. Murmuring softly to herself, Laurite bitterly notes that she still remembers every single slight and cruelty. Shaking off the dark memories, Laurite sternly commands herself to pull her thoughts together and focus. Dusting off her apron, Laurite admits she simply let herself become far too surprised and emotional. Realizing she has chores, Laurite resolves to live a happy life as the ultimate revenge against Rose. Her conscience pricks her, realizing it was wrong to leave Ian so abruptly without a single word. Stealing her resolve, Laurite accepts that she must play along and let him call her Rose. Returning to the main hall, Laurite spots Ian walking through the doorway, looking surprised to see her. Ian greets her warmly, expressing his relief at seeing her finally come out of her room. Shh, Ian suddenly whispers, raising a hand to silence her as her blue eyes widen in shock. Hearing footsteps outside, Ian holds her close to keep her quiet, both of them freezing in suspense. Ian glances warily toward the entryway, tracking the slow, heavy footsteps approaching their secluded winter villa. Whispering softly, Lorette confirms that she also hears the unmistakable sound of multiple people approaching the door. Ian grimly clarifies that there are specifically 2 people walking right up to their front door. Ian realizes the Imperial family's scheduled visit shouldn't have happened until spring, making this arrival highly suspicious. A sudden, thunderous knock rattles the front door as a loud voice calls out from the cold. Ian and Lorette exchange a tense, silent look, realizing they must handle this unexpected intrusion carefully. Ian knows he must hide immediately. If any visitors discover his presence, his secret will be exposed. Reports of a mysterious man hiding in the Duke's villa would inevitably draw imperial scrutiny and soldiers. Knowing they cannot risk a search, Ian grimly tells Lorette that they must not let anyone inside. Lorette quickly whispers for Ian to hide while she bravely prepares to open the door first. As the voice outside calls out again, Lorette takes a deep breath and approaches the door alone. The visitor requests her to open up, introducing himself as a messenger sent from the local government office. Government office? Lorette wonders as a soft click sounds and she cautiously opens the door for him. Upon seeing Lorette's face, the messenger blinks in utter confusion, letting out a surprised gasp. Framed by delicate blue flowers, Lorette peers out, waiting to hear what business the messenger has with her. The messenger explains he is conducting a countrywide census in accordance with the law on behalf of the imperial family. Lorette listens warily as the messenger mentions an herbalist reported seeing a woman ascending the mountain. Lorette silently reasons that people living completely alone are typically excluded from village tax collections. The messenger slyly admits to himself that he only climbed the mountain to see her rumored beauty. Stating she lives alone, Lorette tries to close the door, but his foot suddenly blocks the entrance. Leaning in close, the messenger suspiciously points out that he noticed 2 sets of footprints leading here. A heavy wave of panic strikes Lorette's heart as she realizes her secret might be completely ruined. Quickly recovering, Lorette explains that she merely hosted a rare visitor for a brief time. Humming thoughtfully, the intrusive messenger steps past her and asks if there is anything else. Ignoring her protests, the messenger insists on entering to verify if anyone else is hiding inside. Lorette demands what he is doing as he casually walks in and asks her to serve him tea. The messenger snoops around, confirming the living room is empty as he eyes the staircase. As the messenger heads toward the kitchen, Lorette nervously hopes Ian has successfully hidden himself. With a sudden clatter, a loud noise echoes through the house, catching the snooping messenger completely off guard. A sudden, frantic patter of footsteps sounds as Lorette rushes ahead to contain the situation. Peering through the kitchen window, Lorette lets out a soft gasp at the sight before her. Her eyes widen in panic as she spots the dark-haired man desperately hanging just outside the window. Dangling perilously from the dilapidated exterior stairs, Ian looks up at her with a sheepish expression. Lorette frantically realizes that Ian unknowingly stepped onto the fragile, unsold wooden stairs she had built. Messenger suddenly walks into the kitchen, demanding to know the source of the loud crash. With her heart pounding furiously, Lorette realizes she must act immediately to prevent him from looking outside. Brandishing a sharp kitchen knife, Lorette screams wildly about a plague of terrible bugs to distract him. She frantically rants about winter pests invading her home, declaring she must slaughter them all immediately. Hanging outside, Ian stares in utter bewilderment as her dramatic battle cry echoes through the kitchen. Wielding the knife, Lorette crazily declares there's one last bug left that she must hunt down. The terrified messenger sweats nervously, utterly shocked by the terrifying contrast between her sweet looks and wild behavior. With a comical pig-like expression of pure dread, the messenger realizes she is completely out of her mind. Lorette glares back at him with an unyielding, intense stare that seals his absolute terror. Backing away, the messenger decides she is a dangerous psycho who lives alone for some sinister purpose. Outside the cottage, the messenger's voice trembles as he desperately begs her to put the knife down. Screaming in anger, Lorette hurls kitchen utensils at the messenger, driving him completely out of her home. Tripping over his own feet, the terrified messenger yells that he is leaving immediately. Standing at the threshold, Lorette fiercely threatens to stab him in the neck if he ever returns. The messenger flees through the snowy woods, cursing his terrible luck and vowing never to return. Left alone inside, Lorette catches her breath, her wild eyes slowly softening as the adrenaline fades. With a loud slam, she firmly shuts the door, finally securing the safety of their home. Ian carefully climbs back inside through the window, noting with relief that the intruder has finally gone. An awkward silence fills the room as Ian stands beside Lorette, both of them processing the chaos. A heavy, awkward quiet descends over the hallway as they stand in tense stillness. The silence stretches on, leaving them both standing in mutual embarrassment over the bizarre performance. Attempting to break the ice, Ian sheepishly remarks that she certainly does not like cats. Resting her head against the doorframe, Lorette flatly responds that she actually quite likes cats. Ian innocently whistles to himself, trying to play off the absurd situation as sheep float around them. Ian looks away guiltily as Lorette fixes him with a deeply unimpressed, deadpan stare. Lorette realizes that the sudden intruder completely derailed their conversation about using a real name. Gripping the table tightly, she steels her resolve, telling herself she has nothing left to fear. Turning back to her, Ian gently attempts to resume their interrupted conversation from earlier. Looking him straight in the eyes, Lorette calmly instructs him to just call her Rose. Looking down, she falsely claims she merely dislikes her name and softly apologizes for her previous overreaction. She quietly reflects that to some extent, her dislike for the name Rose is completely true. The legend begins with a mythical pink-haired goddess named Laret, framed by a sea of vibrant red roses. Born to a god and a fairy, the humble goddess reportedly lived a tragic and unclean life to prove her mixed heritage. As the darkness closes in, the tragic tale concludes with the unfortunate goddess meeting an untimely, brutal death. In the quiet kitchen, the silver-haired girl laments her name, calling it a fittingly cruel label for an illegitimate child. Standing quietly, she reasons that no respectable nobleman would ever choose to marry an illegitimate child like her. A warm light illuminates memories of her caring for the injured man and walking together through the quiet winter snow. Looking upon the secluded winter villa, she wonders if their shared memories can help them protect their home. Looking up at him, the silver-haired girl firmly asks the dark-haired man to call her Rose. She resolves to fully embrace the identity of Rose within the walls of this quiet mansion. The dark-haired man remains silent, a hint of a blush gracing his surprised face at her sudden declaration. Sensing her deep-seated hatred for her real name, the man gently agrees to respect her wishes. Feeling relief that she looks more comfortable, he hopes the gap between them hasn't widened once again. Noting that dinner is not yet prepared, the man offers to cook the fresh fish he caught earlier. A fresh, colorful feast of fish, tomatoes, asparagus, and bright lemons awaits preparation in a wooden basin. Boasting of skills honed during his years by the West Sea, he competently prepares to showcase his culinary talents. He fondly recalls his days at sea when his troops would gather on the deck to prepare fresh catches. Looking at the hearth, the dark-haired man reflects on how quickly those seafaring days have slipped into the past. With practiced ease, his hands deftly slide the knife through the fish to cleanly separate the delicate fillets. After seasoning the lean meat with salt, he carefully brushes a savory, dark sauce over the prepared fillet. A rich pat of butter melts with a sizzle in the hot pan as he prepares to sear the fish. While the fish sizzles beautifully in the pan, a colorful array of fresh vegetables is chopped and prepared. He smiles to himself, grateful that the winter chill has kept their precious supply of butter perfectly fresh. She watches in silent fascination as he decides to saute the fresh vegetables in the rich, fragrant butter. Plated to perfection with colorful roasted vegetables and fresh lemon, the elegant main dish is finally complete. With a warm, gentlemanly gesture, the dark-haired man pulls out a rustic wooden chair and invites her to sit. Seated before she even realizes it, she blinks in utter astonishment at his swift and attentive hospitality. Looking at the single plate of food before her, the silver-haired girl asks why he only prepared one serving. He smiles sheepishly, silently hiding the truth that the single fish was simply too small to share. Quickly makes up an excuse by claiming he dislikes fish, leaving her feeling highly skeptical of his story. Appreciating his sweet gesture, she takes her fork and knife to happily savor the delicious meal he made. As the tender flavor melts on her tongue, a warm sense of deep comfort washes over her. Seeing her enjoy the food, the dark-haired man lets out a soft sigh of pure, satisfied relief. He stands quietly by her side, finding immense joy in simply watching her eat the meal he prepared. As she chews, the silver-haired girl reflects on how deeply she used to despise the very word family. Looking at his kind face, she softly accepts that this gentle man has become her third true family member. A serene and heartwarming atmosphere fills the dining room as they share this quiet, precious moment of companionship. Time flows peacefully through the secluded forest, and the harsh winter cold slowly begins to fade away. A pair of tan, strong arms stretch upwards against the ornate banister to welcome the morning. Ian greets the fluffy white cat on the landing, whispering that its mother is still sound asleep. The beautiful white cat, officially named Lavagenis Don Alexandra Angus but affectionately called Nabi, lets out a soft meow. Bending down, the dark-haired man offers Nabi a small piece of delicious fish caught the day before. Resting comfortably on the carpeted stairs, he watches with a fond smile as the little cat devours its breakfast. He chuckles softly at the cat's enthusiastic chewing, playfully agreeing that the fish is indeed delicious. His golden eyes soften as he gazes quietly out, a peaceful and contemplative expression washing over his face. As the pleasant weather coaxes the snow to melt, new signs of life and spring begin to appear. With the arrival of spring, Larit steps outside in a lovely green dress, and Ian gently offers to brush her hair. He notes that their little feline companion, Nabi, has consistently visited their porch for 3 days now. As his gentle hands comb through her silver hair, she quietly admits her growing attachment to this shared life. She reflects that despite all the care they offer, the independent cat still prefers its own wild freedom. Sensing a sudden shift in her thoughts, the dark-haired man looks down at her with a gentle gaze. Dark-haired man holds up a small, freshly bloomed yellow wildflower for her to see. Sitting on the veranda steps, the dark-haired man warmly points out that the flower buds have sprouted. Examining the yellow blossom, the silver-haired girl bluntly notes that the flower is completely inedible. As he nervously crumbles the flower, she fixes him with a deadpan look, demanding an explanation. She reflects that, despite the quiet routine, the transition into spring holds deep significance for both of them. The scene shifts to a grand mansion as narration explains the upcoming spring festival and its advance invitations. Sensing an approaching presence, the dark-haired man alerts her that someone has arrived at the villa. A gloved messenger hands over a formal sealed letter to the silver-haired girl. Receiving the invitation, the silver-haired girl informs the uniformed messenger that she needs a day to respond. Messenger insists she reply immediately, shocking her by addressing her formally as the Duchess. Bowing respectfully, the messenger takes his leave, leaving her alone with the heavy title lingering in the air. She looks down at the letter, deeply conflicted over whether the prestigious title belongs to her or Rose. Walking into the hallway, the dark-haired man immediately notices her troubled expression and approaches her. He asks if the messenger has returned, and she quietly hands him the newly arrived letter. Looking at the letter, the dark-haired man feels a strange detachment upon seeing his true title written down. He remembers his previous life as a duke, receiving grand hospitality and service in his luxurious palace. Memories of delicious treats, night market snacks, and the bustling warmth of his loyal servants wash over him. Clenching his fists, he crumbles the paper in frustration, questioning his passive lifestyle in the cottage. While she asks what is wrong, he silently worries about what has happened to his loyal vassals. Sweat drips down his face as he realizes how deeply complacent he became waiting for this day. She watches him in quiet realization of how much she has come to rely on his presence. Confused by his sudden distress, she silently wonders how she can help him face his burdens. Covering his face, he guiltily reflects on how his comfortable new life made him forget his responsibilities. Stepping forward, she wraps him in a warm, comforting hug to soothe his overwhelming distress and guilt. Embracing him, she bravely suggests that they travel to the imperial palace together to face the nobility. Shocked by her bold declaration, he grips her shoulders and asks her to repeat what she said. Stunned and blushing slightly, the dark-haired man looks at her in absolute disbelief over her request. Looking him directly in the eyes, the silver-haired girl firmly repeats her decision to accompany him. He frantically protests, warning her that failure would bring immense harm and danger to her life. Gripping her sleeve tightly, he warns that even Count Bumer's family could be completely destroyed. Standing firm, he strictly forbids her from coming along, demanding that she remain behind in safety. With a defiant expression, she sharpens her gaze and asks if he thinks she did this out of worry. She declares that his Duke family is now part of hers too, leaving him completely flabbergasted. Staring in awe, he listens as she firmly states she has an obligation to help him succeed. She teasingly asks if it wouldn't be wonderful to live in absolute luxury at least once. Her hand tightens around the letter, cementing her resolve to face the challenges ahead by his side. She dramatically describes her dream of being served by grand royal servants under a magnificent palace chandelier. She playfully claims to detest their humble mountain cottage, trying to ease his heavy guilt with humor. Turning to walk up the stairs, she pauses momentarily to deliver one last playful complaint. Narration highlights how meticulously she maintained the cottage, keeping the fireplace and floor spotlessly clean. He remembers her nurturing winter seedlings and brightening their quiet home with her radiant smile. He fondly remembers her pure happiness and warm smiles while they shared simple meals together. Comically insists he will enjoy the royal luxury all by himself, sparking her sudden annoyance. Gripping the banister, she whirls around to warn him about the dire consequences of failing alone. Standing tall on the steps, she begins to lay out her dramatic plan for if the army arrives. She declares that she will confess to giving him the invitation, utterly shocking him with her stubbornness. Exasperated, the dark-haired man silently laments her incredibly stubborn and unyielding nature. He points out that her plan would get him executed, confident she would never allow that. She turns back to him with wide, curious eyes, quietly questioning if his execution is truly certain. Looking him straight in the eyes, she challenges his assumption with a quiet, knowing question. Laurite surrounds herself with a chilling aura, leaving the dark-haired man sweating under her intense, unwavering gaze. Recognizing her absolute determination, the dark-haired man reluctantly yields and agrees to her plan without further argument. Laurite marches forward with purpose, declaring that her attire for the upcoming National Day banquet must be formal. As she determinedly heads into another room, she dryly comments on his lack of help while he watches. Left alone in the hallway, the dark-haired man nervously contemplates having to chop furniture to fund their long journey. A sudden, loud crash from the other room startles him, prompting him to instantly concede defeat and rush inside. A close-up of her sparkling blue eye reveals her unwavering resolve despite the chaotic mess. Sprawled on the floor with a wooden bucket on her head, she stubbornly insists on attending the banquet. He helps her up amidst the scattered clutter, and she smugly confirms her complete satisfaction with the result. Brushing off his initial worry, the dark-haired man surprises her by revealing that she won't need to buy a dress. She pauses in deep curiosity, quietly wondering if a certain precious hidden item is still kept in the cottage. He leads her toward a dusty hatch, explaining that a secret attic has remained undiscovered by the search parties. Noting the fragile state of the old wooden ladder, he instructs her to wait safely below while he climbs. Reaching up with a practiced hand, he carefully unlatches the attic door, letting down a small shower of dust. He climbs down carrying a dusty, elegant white trunk, prompting her to ask what valuable items lie inside. Wiping the dust away, the dark-haired man softly explains that the chest preserves his late mother's beautiful clothing. She quietly asks if he once lived in this cottage with the former Duchess, and he solemnly nods in response. Taking the heavy white trunk into her own hands, she gently declares her intention to open it. Upon opening the trunk, she lifts out a breathtaking, pristine white gown adorned with intricate blue and gold embroidery. Holding the beautiful heirloom, she is completely mesmerized by the former Duchess's keepsake, having never seen anything so elegant. He gazes at her with a gentle expression, explaining the deep sentimental meaning the gown holds for his family. Scratching his cheek, he nervously worries it might be outdated, offering to chop furniture instead if she dislikes it. His golden eyes widen in soft surprise as she looks him in the face and firmly declares she loves it. She happily twirls with the dress, asserting that no other gown could compare, leaving him deeply touched and relieved. The elegant white gown perfectly complements her snowy silver hair, creating a vision of timeless, radiant beauty. A warm, gentle smile graces his face as he proudly reflects on gifting his mother's cherished dress to his wife. A quiet, lingering pause fills the room as they briefly reflect on the memories stored within the dusty attic. Breaking the peaceful silence, the dark-haired man suddenly reminds her that they must still chop the old furniture anyway. Confused by his insistence, she glances at the dusty floor and questions why they still need to do so. She sighs upon realizing they still lack the necessary travel funds, bracing for several weeks of hard work. Weeks fly by, and with only a week left before the grand anniversary celebration, their departure day finally arrives. Wearing her traveling cloak, she bids a gentle farewell to Nabi, warning the cat to fend for itself. Walking down the path, she playfully mentions the brown bear catching fish, leaving the dark-haired man amused and confused. Under a bright, clear spring sky, the two companionably begin their long-awaited journey toward the bustling capital. As they walk, she notes how unusual it feels to head to the village without any chopped firewood to sell. Her quiet observation strikes a chord, leaving the dark-haired man in silent reflection over their past hardships. She looks back on the exhausting preparation weeks, realizing how much effort they poured into this journey. Arriving near the village gate, he cautiously peers through the lush green bushes to observe the busy streets. Clutching her bag, she walks quietly through the familiar village streets, absorbing the nostalgic surroundings. Watching her walk, he feels a sudden wave of deep guilt, remembering how raw and painful her hands used to get. Exchanging words of quiet gratitude, he silently vows to never let her suffer through grueling physical labor again. The sturdy wooden wheel of a waiting carriage comes into view, signaling that their departure is imminent. As they approach the carriage, a villager curiously asks if they are traveling to the capital, and she confirms it. He boards the carriage first and checks their luggage, while she stands patiently on the cobblestone street. Sudden arrival of the carriage draws immediate attention, causing quite a stir among the gathered villagers. The gossiping villagers wave goodbye while whispering wild rumors about the mysterious hooded husband traveling by her side. Settled inside the carriage, they exchange a silent, comically awkward look in response to the villagers' lively gossip. Looking out the carriage window, she promises to return soon, just as a loud voice suddenly calls her back. Stepping outside, she looks around in surprise as he playfully comments on her unexpected popularity in the village. She stands on the cobblestones in quiet bewilderment, looking at the warm crowd gathered to bid her farewell. An unseen villager kindly reassures the silver-haired girl that she will soon return to their peaceful village. Looking at her with soft golden eyes, the dark-haired man offers a warm, reassuring smile. Reaching out with a gentle invitation, the dark-haired man asks the silver-haired girl to join him on his journey. Their playful banter continues as they jokingly debate whether a big, reliable brown bear is escorting her. Slipping her hand in his, she affectionately accepts his protective presence as they prepare to depart. Settling comfortably inside the carriage together, they feel the quiet excitement of embarking on their long journey. A gentle rumble sounds as the sturdy carriage wheels begin to roll, officially starting their adventure. Once they are underway, the dark-haired man turns to her to ensure she remembers their travel strategy. He carefully begins detailing the first stage of their journey to avoid drawing unwanted attention. He names their first major stop as Oishira, and the silver-haired girl listens with calm attention. Clattering merrily along the path, the carriage speeds onward toward their first destination under the bright sky. Their careful plan involves passing the security checkpoint together before she quietly slips away before the imperial banquet. Successfully passing the castle checkpoint, they make their way toward a bustling city to gather essential supplies. Peering out into the lively evening light, the dark-haired man happily announces their arrival at the city. Though exhausted from the long ride, she prepares herself to step out into the massive city. Oishiro welcomes them with its vibrant night sky, acting as their final stop before the capital. Blending into the lively crowds of Oishira, they walk side by side to find a place to stay. She marvels at the energetic, bustling streets, which remain crowded and lively even late into the night. Having spent months in absolute isolation at the cottage, the overwhelming city crowd feels incredibly surreal to her. With a cheerful tinkle of a doorbell, they step inside a local tavern to secure a room. The lively chatter of drinking patrons fills the tavern as the hooded travelers attract curious glances. The innkeeper casually states the high room rates, leaving the dark-haired man completely taken aback by the price. When he protests the steep price, the innkeeper dryly explains that high demand during peak season dictates the cost. She comically calculates that one night's stay equals 10 bags of potatoes, while he silently panics. Their limited travel budget is laid bare, leaving them with barely enough money for the rest of their trip. He swallows hard, worrying about how they will survive the remaining days until the capital banquet. The silver-haired girl hums thoughtfully, quickly coming up with a practical solution to their financial dilemma. To save their precious funds, she decisively asks the innkeeper for their smallest, cheapest room instead. Assuming they are a newlywed couple, the innkeeper agrees that a cozy small room is perfect for them. With a metallic jingle, the innkeeper cheerfully hands over the key to their tiny shared room. A blush creeps onto her cheeks as the sudden realization of sharing a tiny room sinks in. A humorous, tense silence fills the corridor as they stand before the door of their shared room. She nervously questions if sharing a tiny room is truly all right while he carefully unlocks the door. Soft creak sounds as the wooden door slowly swings open to reveal their temporary quarters. Stepping inside, she is utterly astonished by just how incredibly tiny and cramped the room is. He nearly loses his mind upon realizing the single bed in the corner is unbelievably narrow. She surprisingly declares the room perfectly fine, catching him completely off guard with her easygoing attitude. Shrugging off his panic, she casually marches toward the bed since they have no other options. Placing her bag on the mattress, she begins unpacking her travel essentials with quiet composure. When she casually offers him the first bath, he shrieks in pure red-faced embarrassment. Overwhelmed by awkwardness, he desperately tries to clear his mind of any inappropriate thoughts. Under the quiet glow of the full moon, his sense of gentlemanly guilt weighs heavily on him. Stepping back into the room with wet hair and a towel, he announces that his bath is finished. He suddenly freezes, his golden eyes widening in quiet surprise as he looks toward the small bed. He finds her fast asleep, curled up peacefully on the tiny mattress while clutching her cloak. Sitting quietly beside her, he gazes down at her serene sleeping face with immense tenderness. He carefully tucks her in under the warm duvet, ensuring she stays comfortable throughout the chilly night. Moving with absolute stealth, he gently slides onto the tiny space remaining on the mattress. Lying beside his sleeping wife, he realizes that companion is truly the most beautiful word for her. He promises himself that once he reclaims his rightful title, cozy nights together will become their wonderful new normal. As the night deepens, they share the tiny bed in peaceful, comfortable silence. She stirs restlessly in her sleep, turning her silver head under his protective arm. He shifts quietly on the narrow mattress to avoid waking his sleeping companion. A soft hum escapes her lips as she unconsciously curls close against his broad chest. His golden eyes widen slightly as he gently pulls the warm blanket over her shoulders. Looking down at her peaceful face, his heart begins a rhythmic pounding beat in the quiet room. From outside the lit window, a whispered wish for a good night seals their peaceful evening. Several days fly by in a blur, finally bringing them to the Grand Imperial Capital. Clad in a dark, heavy traveling cloak, the dark-haired man stands in their temporary quarters. She calls out from behind the screen, voicing her nervous doubts about wearing the elegant dress properly. With a sharp click of her heels, she steps forward, the white gown rustling against the floor. He turns around in quiet surprise, his golden eyes widening as he catches sight of her. She emerges fully dressed, announcing that she has finished preparing exactly as he instructed. Clad in the breathtaking white and gold gown, her radiant beauty leaves him completely speechless. Looking down at the exquisite fabric, she self-consciously admits she has never worn anything so grand. He stands utterly spellbound, completely captivated by how stunning his wife looks in his mother's gown. He silently reflects that calling her a mere goddess would be an absolute understatement. Clearing his throat, he reassures her that the elegant dress perfectly suits her timeless beauty. A bright, relieved smile lights up her face as his warm words dissolve her lingering worries. Stepping closer, she gently tugs on his dark cloak to capture his full attention. She softly prompts him, reminding him that they still have urgent matters to attend to. Nodding in agreement, the dark-haired man turns and quietly exits the room to prepare. The Grand Imperial Palace glows brilliantly under the golden hues of a setting sun. A sturdy brown carriage clatters merrily along the cobblestone path toward the castle gate. Seeing the old carriage, a palace guard steps forward to demand confirmation of their noble identities. Stepping down from the carriage, she places her hand in his as her white dress rustles. The guard's eyes widen in immediate recognition, and he quickly apologizes while asking for their invitation. A gloved hand reaches out from under the hood to present the sealed imperial invitation. Taking the envelope, the guard hurriedly opens it, his eyes scanning the elegant document in shock. The guard mutters the name Duchess Reinhardt in utter disbelief, shocked to see her arrival. He stares at her magnificent gown, wondering how she could possibly afford such an expensive heirloom. Clutching her hands, she secretly celebrates their successful entry past the initial security checkpoint. The guard suddenly pauses, his sharp eyes narrowing as he looks toward the hooded companion. Walking forward, the guard firmly declares that even close servants must present themselves for inspection. The guard commands the hooded, dark-haired man to take off his hood for identity confirmation. She quickly steps in, explaining that her husband will suffer from severe burns if exposed to daylight. She swallows hard, knowing that exposing his face would instantly reveal his identity to the knights. Under his dark cloak, the husband tensely clenches his gloved fist in preparation for trouble. The guard recoils in shock and horror, deeply disturbed by her sudden medical warning. The guard's vivid imagination conjures a grotesque, horribly scarred face, making him shudder with fear. She coolly scolds the guard for his rudeness, while her husband keeps his head safely lowered. Thoroughly disgusted, the guard mutters about spreading germs just by looking at a monstrous skin condition. Looking deeply unsettled, the guard reluctantly holds back any further questions or complaints. Noting his disgust, she realizes her clever burn lie worked exactly as she had hoped. With a polite tone, she asks the uneasy guard if they are finally free to enter. Waving them through, the intimidated guard quickly grants them permission to enter the palace grounds. Walking up the grand steps, she quietly whispers her relief about preparing their clever disguise beforehand. As they enter the bustling venue, the surrounding noble guests immediately begin to whisper amongst themselves. The gossiping crowd murmurs in surprise about the sudden return of the forgotten family lawn. Looking at her gorgeous gown, the guests comment on her undeniable elegance and thick-skinned audacity. Surrounding guests mutter in utter disbelief as they watch her unexpected arrival. Elegant murmurs fill the air as guests wonder how she had the audacity to enter the imperial palace. Larit sneers bitterly, completely dismissing any ridiculous notion of her having a kind family. She reflects on the family that stripped her of everything, leaving her with nothing but a name. Soft, rhythmic footsteps echo through the quiet corridor as she approaches the grand entrance. Standing before the massive wooden doors, the couple prepares themselves to face the noble crowd inside. She walks forward while reminding herself to find the perfect moment to slip away undetected. Her husband gently covers his face, making sure his dark hood remains securely in place. Under the shadow of his hood, he promises to find her in a few days with more confidence. With a polite bow, she wishes him good luck before they go their separate ways. Stepping inside alone, she is overcome with mixed emotions about her status as an illegitimate child. With a quiet click of her heels, she wishes they could have shared a proper conversation first. She laments her harsh destiny as Larit, resolving never to pass down the curse of her lineage. Startled from her deep thoughts, she quickly warns herself to stay sharp and maintain her composure. When the butler politely asks if she is ready, she nods with determined resolve to proceed. A massive glittering ballroom comes into view, overflowing with the chatter of highly elegant nobles. The suffocating atmosphere weighs heavily on her as the guests intentionally keep their distance. Tightly grasping her gown, she reminds herself to stay calm and just be herself. Standing gracefully amid the grand decorations, she bravely ignores the whispering eyes of the crowd. She quietly sighs, hoping she can slip out of the party completely unnoticed. Suddenly, a sharp heel click sounds as someone abruptly blocks her path. She gasps and stops in her tracks as a familiar presence stands before her. Her eyes widen in immediate recognition as she hears a voice she hoped never to hear again. Rose stands frozen in utter shock, glaring at her sister with intense disbelief. Read that back with a faster speed. Rose stands frozen in utter shock, glaring at her sister with intense disbelief. A tense, silent confrontation between the two sisters quickly attracts the curious stares of nearby guests. A cold silence settles over the grand hall as Rose's name is uttered in disbelief. Larit swallows hard, silently admitting she isn't surprised to see Rose at the banquet. Trembling slightly, she tightly grips her gown to stop herself from showing any weakness. Rose covers her mouth and mockingly laughs at Larit's struggle to survive. Glaring viciously, Rose aggressively demands to know how she obtained such a grand dress. Nearby guests whisper maliciously, assuming Larit stole the gown from the Brumaire estate. Rose waves her hand dismissively, deciding she should avoid causing an embarrassing scene at the palace. Shocked by Larit's calm, silent demeanor, Rose stammers in sudden defensive confusion. Rose's face contorts with rage as she seethes over her sister's unexpectedly cold tone. Crossing her arms, Rose scoffs in disbelief at her sister's audacity to ignore her. Leaning close, Rose viciously whispers a warning for Larit to stop acting like a noble duchess. With a harsh bump, Rose shoves past her with a spiteful smirk of satisfaction. Rose walks away triumphantly, leaving her sister standing alone in the grand hallway. Larit looks back in sheer bewilderment, questioning what is wrong with her unstable sister. Clutching her arm, she realizes that Rose will never let her get away so easily. The lively, high society guests continue chatting merrily, completely oblivious to the sisters' silent feud. Music notes float through the air as the elite crowd enjoys their luxurious evening. She picks up a crystal glass of wine, seeking a brief moment of distraction. Taking a sip, she reflects on how Rose managed to restrain her usual violent outburst. She bitterly resolves to continue ignoring her family and treating them as absolute strangers. A loud bell chime rings through the palace, announcing that time is rapidly flying by. Peering over the grand balcony railing, she prepares to make her quiet departure. With quick, silent footsteps, she makes her way down the winding palace stairs. Stepping outside the ballroom door, she lets out a heavy sigh of relief at her successful escape. Looking out into the night, she turns her head back to make sure she wasn't followed. Watching a noble couple walk together down the grand corridor, the silver-haired woman feels a sudden pang of loneliness. Standing alone in the bustling imperial hallway, she watches the surrounding couples pass by in joyful harmony. As she walks down the palace steps alone, she quietly laments how happy everyone else seems to be. Looking back on her childhood, the silver-haired woman reflects on how accustomed she has become to being completely alone. Wandering through the grand palace gardens, she feels the icy weight of her lifelong isolation catching up to her. Stopping on her path, she realizes with deep sadness how emotional the painful memories of her past have made her. Resolving to put her melancholy thoughts aside, she decides it is time to return to her quarters. Walking along the dark stone path at night, she remains completely unaware of the mysterious figures watching her from the shadows. Hearing a sudden rustle behind her, she abruptly stops and turns around to face the dark courtyard. Her eyes widen in sudden shock as an unexpected threat emerges from the darkness. Before she can react, two masked kidnappers ambush her, cutting off her breath and stifling her screams. She struggles desperately against her captors as they ruthlessly bind her arms and choke her into submission. Bound tightly in a sack, she tearfully recognizes her cruel sister Rose Brumaire as the mastermind behind the attack. The merciless guards drag her away through the courtyard, mocking her futile attempts to break free. Inside the palace, Rose Brumaire smugly sips her drink, thoroughly pleased with the success of her wicked scheme. Overwhelmed by terror and despair, the silver-haired woman silently cries out for someone to save her. In a lavishly decorated room, a guard reports to Rose that their captive fainted after a violent struggle. Rose listens with a cold, uncaring expression as the guard details their prisoner's state of semi-consciousness. Guards mockingly describe her wild, beast-like resistance, while Rose quietly enjoys her tea. Rose sips her tea with a venomous smile, noticing her sister is finally starting to wake up. Bound on the floor, the silver-haired woman looks up in horror as Rose mockingly greets her darling little sister. Rose gazes down at her helpless captive with an expression of pure, unadulterated malice. Sitting on her opulent chair, Rose dismisses her sister's protests with cold, haughty laughter. Shrugging casually, Rose mockingly asks what could possibly be so urgent about her sister's situation. Laurite tenses, desperately calculating how much time remains before her husband is scheduled to arrive. Rose taunts her bound sister about her absence and her relationship with the mysterious Count. Rose slowly stands up and walks over to her bound sister, her smug expression never wavering. Laurite glares back in utter disgust, silently cursing the dreadful Brumaire estate she hoped to forget. With a sharp clink, Rose aggressively splashes her tea onto the floor right in front of her sister. Towering over her sister, Rose furiously blames Laurite for ruining her chance to meet the royal family. Seething with irrational anger, Rose demands to know why her useless sister was ever born. With a cruel smirk, Rose pours the remaining hot tea directly over her sister's head to humiliate her. The tea drips down Laurite's face as she endures her sister's spiteful torment in silent defiance. From her knees, Laurite bitterly asks Rose if she thinks she chose to be born into this misery. Rose holds her teacup high, coldly agreeing that her sister's pathetic existence was indeed a tragedy. Heavy silence fills the room as a dark, intense rage begins to build inside Laurite. Glaring upward with fierce determination, Laurite venomously speaks Rose Brumeyer's name. Rose sneers in amusement, mockingly pointing out her bound sister's newfound audacity to glare at her. Snapping her fingers, Rose commands her personal maid to step forward and handle the insolent captive. Rose whispers a cruel command to her maid, who bows in obedient preparation to carry it out. Laurite watches in tense anticipation as the maid walks toward her with a cold, menacing aura. With a brutal strike, the maid slaps Laurite across the face, forcing her to let out a sharp cry of pain. The maid raises her hand again, preparing to strike the bound woman once more. Rose raises her hand and orders her maid to stop, declaring that her sister's bruised face now looks perfect. Trembling with rage, Laurite glares at her sister with eyes burning like fire, spitting out the word sister. Mocking her sister's fierce expression, Rose giggles in fake terror before waving her maid out of the room. Laurite bitterly points out that their mutual, deep-seated hatred was entirely unavoidable. Rose bursts into mocking laughter, completely dismissing her sister's words as pathetic excuses. Rose looms like a colossal, dark shadow of absolute power over her tiny, bound sister, laughing at her helplessness. Slumped on the floor with her hands bound behind her back, Laurite quietly reflects on her desperate situation. Laurite confronts her sister, declaring that their suffering is entirely the fault of the Brumaire family. Rose glares at her sister in stunned silence, deeply offended by Laurite's defiant words. Standing tall in the opulent room, Rose mockingly asks if Laurite is still trembling from their father's harsh treatment. Rose's smug grin falters as she remembers her father's violent outburst, shattering a wineglass in a fit of rage. With a sharp, sudden clatter, Rose aggressively grabs the elegant porcelain teapot from the table. Seething with uncontrolled rage, Rose lifts the teapot high, demanding to know what her sister could possibly understand. Laurite shuts her eyes tightly, bracing herself against her sister's relentless verbal abuse and physical threats. Placing the teapot down, Rose mockingly points out that Laurite has been living in that dusty old villa for far too long. Rose steps closer, declaring that Laurite won't have to return any of the money she received from the Duke. With a cruel smile, Rose touches Laurite's forehead, announcing she is being taken directly to the Brumaire estate instead. Laurite gasps in shock as Rose snaps her fingers and calls out for her personal knights to seize her. Rose coldly commands the guards to carry the bound woman away and throw her into the wagon. Desperately struggling against her captors, Laurite begs to be untied while Rose dismisses her cries with mock sadness. Rose crosses her arms and mockingly asks the guards if they have any comments on their captive's noisy resistance. One of the guards sneers mockingly at Laurite, praising Rose's cruel brand of care. The guard roughly pulls Laurite's silver hair back, menacingly describing the intense pain of resetting a dislocated shoulder. Rose claps her hands in delight, suggestively prompting Laurite to offer a proper apology for her insolence. Rose smiles triumphantly, thoroughly enjoying her absolute control over her helpless, bound sister. A faint slap sounds as Laurite is dragged away, her bruised cheek stinging from the continuous torment. Suddenly, the heavy doors burst open as a panicked maid rushes in, frantically calling out to Rose. Annoyed by the intrusion, Rose demands to know how the maid dared to enter without her express permission. The breathless maid delivers shocking news. Duke Reinhardt, whom everyone believed dead, has suddenly returned to the palace. Rose stands completely frozen, her eyes widening in utter disbelief at the impossible announcement. Distraught, Rose questions if this means the imperial family is in grave danger due to the traitor's return. Muttering in frantic disbelief, Rose paces across the room, unable to accept that the Duke is still alive. With hurried footsteps, Rose rushes out of the chambers to confirm the unbelievable rumors herself. The maid watches anxiously as the guards continue to drag the quiet, helpless Larit out of the room. One of the guards leans close to Larit, whispering a quiet hope for her to succeed in escaping. Suddenly, poking her head back in, Rose cheerfully announces that she almost forgot to give final orders. Rose commands the guards to drag Larit through the back door to ensure she cannot escape. Larit silently curses her bad luck, realizing she was so close to being left behind unnoticed. Rose calls out a final warning, sternly telling the guards not to lay hands on her belongings. With a chilling smile, Rose reminds them of the severe consequences of bruising her fragile ego. Smiling smugly, Rose finally departs, leaving the guards alone with their bound prisoner. The guard grabs Larit by her silver hair, mockingly asking if she wants to be beaten senseless. Larit fiercely bites the guard's gloved hand, triggering a sudden violent struggle as a sharp gasp echoes.
Humming a cheerful tune, Rose walks down the palace corridor, utterly pleased with her wicked schemes.
Looking over the balcony railing, Rose spots her mother and father talking in the grand staircase hall below. Rose quickly runs down the carpeted steps, eagerly demanding to know what is happening in the palace. Her father crosses his arms, explaining they don't know the details since her mother returned first. Standing together under the massive chandelier, the Brumeyer family anxiously awaits further news of the Duke's arrival. Rose clasps her hands together in mock joy, loudly celebrating the miraculous news that the Duke is alive. Her father thoughtfully strokes his chin, questioning why a traitor would dare enter the hostile imperial palace alone. Staring downward, he contemplates the grim reality of treason, realizing there must be something terribly wrong. Elsewhere in the palace, a tall hooded figure in a dark cloak walks determinedly through the gilded hallway. With firm, steady steps, the mysterious man's dark leather boots echo against the red carpeted floor. The hooded man pauses, scanning the magnificent golden arches of the imperial palace with a sharp gaze. Duke Reinhardt quietly hopes his beloved wife is made it back home safely in his absence. Gazing over the grand banister, the Duke notes that fewer guards should make escaping much easier. Pulling his dark hood low, Duke Reinhardt walks down the quiet corridor, ready to face whatever awaits him. Under his dark hood, the scarred Duke Reinhardt quietly reflects on his wife's initial reluctance to join him. He fondly recalls how Larit first asked if he liked stew, remembering her warmth during his recovery. Readjusting his dark hood, the Duke contemplates their year together as he stealthily navigates the palace halls. Putting his sentimental thoughts aside, the Duke focuses on his target as two guards patrol the corridor. With a quick ting sound, a bouncing gold coin catches the attention of a patrolling guard. Intrigued by the sun's sound, the guard decides to investigate the mysterious noise in the hallway. The other guard waits behind, wondering what is happening in the palace while his partner investigates. A gloved hand reaches down to retrieve the golden coin left on the floor. Kneeling with his lantern, the guard examines the gold coin in bewilderment. As the guard mutters that it seems like nothing special, the Duke's dark shadow towers silently behind him. With a menacing look in his golden eyes, the Duke quietly beckons the guard closer. After swiftly knocking out the guards one by one, the Duke stands amidst their fallen bodies. Exhaling a tired sigh, the Duke hopes his wife has safely reached the mansion as he moves onward. Resolving to make his grand entrance, the Duke steps forward to confront his true adversaries. A palace official turns around in surprise as he senses someone approaching the restricted chambers. The official bars the doorway, declaring that only members of royalty are permitted to enter. Ignoring the warning, the Duke firmly grabs the official and pushes his way past him. The official is left completely stunned by the intruder's overwhelming physical strength. The massive doors swing open as the Duke boldly strides into the grand golden ballroom. Murmurs ripple through the crowd of noble guests as the mysterious hooded man descends the grand staircase. Panic begins to spread among the guests as they demand guards to apprehend the uninvited stranger. At the center of the hall, the blonde-haired crown prince looks on in surprise at the sudden disturbance. The Duke stands in absolute silence, locking his gaze onto the royal figures before him. A voice frantically warns the crown prince to step back and stay away from the dangerous intruder. Chaos erupts in the ballroom as the Duke glares intensely at the royals from beneath his dark hood. The crown prince stares at the mysterious hooded man with a mixture of shock and recognition. The crown prince is deeply shaken, realizing his old best friend Ian has somehow survived.